Welcome to Systems for Success. Many people think success is something that just happens to you if you're lucky or work hard enough. We believe that behind every success is a system in action. My name is Lonnie Ginger. Thanks for joining me and my family as we share real-life stories and learnings that might just help you design the life of your dreams. Hi, Systems for Success family. Welcome to another Family Roundtable episode. We're excited because we are just about at the end of our annual family goal setting weekend. I think it's our 16th or 17th annual goal setting weekend. And we have this year officially changed the name to our annual goal celebration weekend. Because as adults now we have, you didn't notice that on the announcements?
We didn't know that. That's cool.
I have officially changed the name to Goal Celebration Weekend because in recent years here, we have shifted from taking the full weekend to set goals and celebrate our accomplishments from the prior year and celebrate and talk about how we can support goals in the future year, to all of us setting our goals and doing our reflections on our own, because we now have the maturity to do that and the time and space and processes to do that. And we also have a lot more to share, so it takes a full weekend for us just to share everything. So it's been, again, so amazing to hear all of your reflections on the learnings and the accomplishments, the mistakes and things learned from those mistakes, the things that you're going to stop doing and start doing based on last year's learnings. It's been super encouraging, and I always learned so much from all of you. So thanks for sharing that. We are in process of sharing our goals for the new year, and I thought it might be helpful if, for two purposes, for our family's benefit, we capture some of the key learnings that we've shared from this last year. 2020 was an interesting year, to say the least, for, I think, everybody on the planet. Different than we expected. That's pretty realistic to say about just about everybody on the planet. So the question is, what did we learn from all of that unique experience we had in 2020? So I thought it might be helpful if we share, to start with, just go around the table and each person share like a key mistake or accomplishment and what you learned from that, or key discovery or learning that you think will help you in the next year and beyond, and that might benefit our Systems for Success family that's listening to this. So, Shelley, do you want to start with one or two of your key learnings were this year?
Well, when it all boiled down to a whole year of COVID, I was tempted to worry at different points of the year. And as I started reflecting over the past, what has it been, 9-10 months now? Mm-hmm. There were different points where I was tempted to spend some time worrying, and it just took so much energy and it made me so tired. So I would try to turn that into faith and gratefulness and just planning a great future for our family and our future. And then as I was looking back over the year in my reflection time, it actually turned out to be one of the best years of my life and of our family's lives. So I realized if I pray and I choose faith, I don't need to worry. And the opposite of that is, if you're worrying, why pray? Yeah. So I choose to keep faith and to turn my worries over to God. And even though I did that imperfectly this year, it was such a blessing. It just took so much stress off my shoulders and made me able to be grateful and have a happy, sunny attitude regardless of any circumstances.
That's great. Yeah, I really appreciated that. And your focus on gratitude, and a lot of you have focused so much on gratitude this year that has helped all of us, I think, live above circumstances and enjoy life despite circumstances. So that's great.
You're
Good
welcome.
learning. All right. Tay, would you like to go next?
So a key learning for me this year was blessed with being able to go through Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny at the end of this year, which was really, really incredible. And I've done a bit of counseling and learning more about myself and understanding, kind of where I come from and how that has impacted my life leading up to this point. But if you want to go into that, that could be a whole nother episode. So we'll keep it high level. But one of the things that we learned was effective blaming. And I feel like I have a really good gratefulness practice personally, but having a process to effectively blame a person or a circumstance for how your life has turned out now was really cool to go through. Even though I kind of had already done that, it was just a more succinct process. And that process is really about changing your story. So taking something or someone from your past and understanding all aspects of that story and then changing it around and becoming grateful and essentially blaming them for the positive side of that story. So the positive outcomes of that story. And for me, having my dad and my stepdad both struggle with alcoholism and drugs and going through rehab quite a lot when I was growing up, not me personally, but them, and being along for that ride for them. My effective blaming is I can blame them for showing me what not to do with my own children. I can blame them for sending me to counseling or being the reason that I went to counseling so early on and learning more about myself, who I am, and boundaries that I can set. I blame those situations for leading me up here to Washington, where I met Kylan and falling in love with him, and therefore blame that whole situation for having this family and my daughter. And I can blame them for teaching me how to be resilient and stand up for myself and be self-sufficient.
That's awesome. Very powerful.
Powerful.
Thank you. That was one of the things that I really learned.
You got mom
this year.
crying. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
Thanks.
I like blaming anybody and anything that brought you into our life. So
Thank you. Yeah, me too. I mean, in the moment, right, like you don't see how this will benefit you in the future a lot of times, especially when it can feel so dark and heavy and you can feel so alone. But seeing the outcome of it and living the outcome of it now is, I wouldn't have had it any other way, honestly. It was a very important part of my life and a very important part of who I am today.
Wow. That's awesome.
Necessary.
Thanks for sharing that. I think for a lot of people in this world, there's a lot of effective blaming of COVID for the potential benefits that it has brought and will bring to a lot of our lives. So that's a great lesson. I think will bless a lot of people. Yeah.
I hope so.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
My turn.
Go ahead.
So one of the challenges that I was dealing with all year that I learned a lot from was just understanding my shifting role as a leader in our company. The choir has grown from 7 to 10-ish folks last year to this year 20, and on track to be at maybe a team of 50 over the next 12 months, which means my role as a leader in the organization, as it goes through these different growth stages, my role needs to continue to shift. I get a lot of my personal self-worth and value from crossing things off of a to-do list. It's been a lifelong struggle, and I get a lot of value and satisfaction from doing what you would call quadrant 1 tasks, urgent but not important tasks, where you should be doing a lot more quadrant 2 tasks. It's what is that called? The something matrix. Stephen Covey covers it, I think, in 7 Habits. Quadrant 2 tasks are not urgent but important tasks. And as a leader with more and more subordinates, I realize I need to spend much more of my time, instead of doing things or crossing things off a to-do list, learning is the biggest one, and passing on that learning, down and sideways along the org chart, strategizing and thinking about the things we should be doing, defining the things we should be doing, and delegating. That's been a big learning experience and still in the thick of it for sure. Yeah, that's me.
Great. Good. Thanks, Kylan. That's a powerful lesson for all of us. And I admire so much how much you continually learn and grow and determine what next level you need to grow to and what next skill sets you need to have to get in front of the needs of whatever you're leading. I've seen that in different businesses that you've led over time. And that's what allows you to be so effective and bless a lot of people in the process. So it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. I would add a couple of books to that. There's been a lot of discussion in the family this year about reading the right book at the right time and how powerful that can be. So this last year, the book I read, which was the most impactful, was the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which is essentially about organizing your organization, operating system for any business. So that's a good one along these lines, as well as this year, since we're scaling, the book's Scaling Up. Can't recall the author, but that's the next book I'm reading, which seems to be the right book at the right time.
That's great.
And that was something that we incorporated or implemented personally after you reading the book Traction, was the VTO.
Yeah, why don't you guys talk about that? I think that would be really helpful for people to understand the VTO process from the book Traction. And it's designed to apply in a business, and I'm applying that in our business right now too. But you guys have applied it in your family, which is very impressive. So talk about that. What'd you do?
The VTO is the concept from the book Traction, again, by Gino Wickman. It stands for Vision Traction Organizer. Essentially, it's laying out your vision in a way that's actually going to give you traction towards it, get you from point A to point B. It's meant for business, but we adopted it into our family. Some concepts apply still. Some concepts don't apply, but most do apply still. But the framework is essentially clearly defining your 10-year goals, your 3-year goals. Well, I think it's 10-year vision, 3-year plan, 1-year goals, and then quarterly rocks, essentially.
Quarterly objectives,
Yeah, quarterly rocks or objectives are the things you do to get to your 1-year goal. Your 1-year goal should fit into your 3-year, your 3-year towards your 10-year trajectory. Along with that are some other things, including defining your core values, the things that filter decisions through, stuff like that. So we defined all of that.
We'll talk about your 10-year vision process. What was it like to come up with a 10-year vision for your family?
It's an interesting process. I don't think we'll ever be quite done. But it's like, is it Tony Robbins that says you overestimate what you can do in a year, underestimate what you can do in 10 years. So we tried to keep the 10-year a pretty big, audacious goal. So one of those is to buy a large ranch, right?
Thousands of acres.
And do what with it?
There you go.
We essentially would use the ranch as a retreat, so develop an atmosphere and kind of program that helps to provide healing, personal development, training on said core values, training on servant leadership, impact, and how to serve, give back to people in their various fields.
So large land. The idea behind it was, can we build a place and have a reputation by the time we have that place, and a curriculum by the time we have that place that would influence the influencers? We're trying to, how can we make a really big impact? It's like, well, we could influence this, that, or we could become people and build an environment that influences influencers. So that's the general idea, and we're still trying to work it out. But it requires a lot of work and knowledge on coach and train people. Requires our vision for the land is large, talking multiple millions of dollars in structures, and want it to be self-sustaining and all this stuff. So it's a big vision, but then it's just fun to work your way backwards then and think, okay, so in 3 years, where do we need to be in terms of our knowledge, our network, the things we've built, our income, our net worth, right, to be able to reach the point we need to in 10 years. So simply, and then what does that mean for this year? And what does that mean for this quarter? What does that mean for this week? What does that mean today?
That's great. So you have all that written down. You have the 10-year, you have the 3-year picture. You have your 1 year. Of course, I know you've been sharing about your 1 year.
Yeah.
And then you take it down to quarterly goals, quarterly rocks, the big rocks you're going to do each quarter. That's awesome.
Yep.
So what's that felt like for you, Tay, as a woman in the family, to have that kind of picture clear in your life, for you and Kylan to be on the same page on that?
Oh, I love it.
What do you love about it?
I love organizing it. I think I probably love organizing it more than Kylan does. No, but it's been good. This last year we really made it a point to kind of simplify and really streamline and narrow in our focus on what we want to put our time towards, especially after creating this VTO. And now it just feels like any decision we make as a family, we always bring it back to this. Okay, is this in line with our vision? How does this help push this forward? Does it or does it not? And if it doesn't, then we, say no. It makes making decisions a lot easier and makes seeing the right steps easier.
Yeah, the biggest benefit by far is just focus, and then being able to qualify and disqualify the opportunities and noise today.
Yeah. Good work, you guys. It's exciting.
Thanks.
Since you were talking about your system for long-term planning, Sam and Shalane, why don't you talk a bit about your system that you guys are implementing for your long-term vision and working back from that, your one thing process. We're going to talk about that, and then you can go back to some of your learnings from last year, but we're on this topic. Why don't you talk about, because you're using a similar conceptual approach, but a different methodology to accomplish it.
Yeah. So a lot of people listening may have heard of a guy named Gary Keller, and he's really made his name in the real estate game. And he wrote a book that I highly recommend called The One Thing. And it's around this question of what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. And this is actually the first time I've ever goal set this way. And I read this book probably, 2.5 years ago or so. And I remember really wishing I had the concepts in this book, like at the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, because they just really changed my entire perspective on how to go about things. And so he just came out with a planner, and this was Sam's Christmas present to me, and he knows me very well because I love planning. And it was the first time I had goals set this way, and I've been really digesting the concept for about 2 years now, and how he helps you boil down what your one thing for the year is, and you can have supporting goals for that. As he goes through a process of a few questions, and I'll just do a really high level, but the big picture is he has you really brainstorm on your someday goals. So these are like, your 10-year vision. So it's similar to what Kylan and Tay were just talking about with their 10-year vision, only first he has you start with your someday goals. So these, for me, are things like I want to accomplish in my lifetime. So it's super big picture, just goals that scare you, goals that, you kind of think, oh, do I even dare to dream this? For example, one of mine is I want to own a tropical island. So it looks like we're going to have a big ranch, tropical island.
Sweet.
I would like to do something similar to what Kylan and Tay were mentioning and have some sort of retreat center on there and really use it as a tool to create more magic in people's lives. And so that's one of many of my someday goals. And then he has you say your 5-year goals. And these are really the things of, okay, what do I need to accomplish in the next 5 years to chip away at my someday goals? And one that is relevant to the tropical island is, let's see, there's quite a few. One of ours is to successfully sell our business, Watt Advertising, for 50 million plus, and do that in the next 5 years or sooner. So you can see how that kind of plays into the someday goal. And we have a bunch of other financial goals that support something like buying a tropical island.
Yeah.
But the breakdown continues to mapping out your 1-year goals. And a specific question he asks is, what do you want to accomplish someday that's worth focusing on this year? And then what do you need to accomplish this next year to stay on track for your 5-year goals? And so you kind of go through this process of defining your big picture, breaking it down, and then eventually have a list of 1-year goals. And then you look at that list and you ask yourself the hard question. Keep in mind, Sam and I took a whole week off grid last week to
really take a lot of space and think about this because it took me a long time to come up with my one thing. And you ask yourself when you're looking at the 1-year goals, okay, what's the one thing I can do this year such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And I haven't even shared my one thing. Oh boy.
You haven't completely finished our goal sharing process. We're actually doing this recording during the grandkids' nap time. And so we weren't quite done sharing, but we grabbed the opportunity of peace and quiet to record something. So share your one thing.
So my one thing for 2021, and I boiled it down and really decided, okay, what's the one thing that matters that will push all these dials forward or make them all unnecessary? And it is to build abundant relationships with holistically evolved people that manifest magical experiences for ourselves and others. So with that one thing, I took that and did a thing called a 411, which essentially takes that one thing and breaks it down into 2 areas, personal and professional. And you do your top 4 priorities underneath those areas with strategies. And that's a whole process, but I really recommend doing something like this or what Kylan and Tay did to give you perspective on your life and where you want to go. And it's insane how much clarity you can get from really taking this space to ask what you want for your life and how much more meaningful every single task you do during the day is when you know why you're doing it and what the bigger picture play is. So
just to clarify, the one thing is different than your personal mission statement.
Yes, this is my one goal for 2021.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if nothing else gets done and I have defined what this one thing looks like exactly in a SMART goal, but I say it out loud every day along with my destiny poster that we did from the Tony Robbins event, which is amazing. And it's incredible.
So keep explaining your 411. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Okay, so your 411 is you choose 4 annual goals underneath the personal sphere and the professional sphere that support your one goal at the top. So kind of like view it as a
4
triangle.
Personal and 4 professional? Okay.
Yes. And then each month you have 4 personal and 4 professional goals that support those 4 annual goals on each side. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then you take those same things and you do 4 weekly goals that support each of those 4 monthly goals, and 4 professional goals that support each of those 4 monthly goals.
Okay.
And then you put that in the calendar and you do those things. That's the first thing you do every day. So like this past week, I split out my 8 total top priorities throughout the week, and past my morning routine, I did those things first with my phone away and just completely honed in. And it really makes you feel like you're pushing the lever forward. And that's what is the most important thing about this, is make sure your 4 goals are really lever pushing goals. So the most important thing you can do to push the dial.
Wow, that's great.
So reversing the foundation that built all of this, and what I'm stoked to make traction on this year is I started 2020 with the mantra of, this is really funny to me looking back on, but it was along the lines of 2020 is the year everything came into alignment and the jet to success and fulfillment took off. And I went into 2020 like everyone else did, most likely, with a really clearly defined way of how that was going to look and the vehicles that were going to make that happen. And then I was doing really good on those things for the first 3 months. And COVID. And what ended up happening to me is pretty much all the ways, especially on the business realm, that I thought I was going to accomplish this mantra, this big goal, got wiped out. And in the middle of the year, had to shut down a business and go through that whole process, and then had a period of a couple months that was really the desert, where a lot of the structures in my life and visions that I thought I was going to be working on for at least the next 3 to 5 years were gone. And I really had a choice there to revert back to old ways or to choose to rebuild myself. And so through a lot of hard work and a lot of self-reflection and space, I chose to continue to do the hard things and take this opportunity, a cleansing and like a spring cleaning of life. And I wrote in a journal entry in my reflection, saying, I did the hard things, I focused on what I wanted, and I let go of the rest. And so it was a year of letting go and simplifying and defining what I really wanted for my life, and then just continuously showing up every day to make those hard decisions that were my best guess of what was going to move the dial forward. And those were the least comfortable things most of the time, but I can thoroughly say that the jet to success and fulfillment did take off, although towards the end of the year in a really significant way. And it's so cool to look back on my 2020 goals and realize that the why and the outcome of my goals, like about 80% of those things did happen through a whole lot of turbulence on the takeoff, but they happened. And the meaning in the year for me really was in the contrast and in the process of getting that jet off the runway and almost crashing several times. And the whole journey was the meaningful part, not the actual being in the air now. And that's epic and a huge learning that really shaped and tied all that together as I did a lot of work around my beliefs around money. And just to summarize, really the belief of, before I kind of attached a lot of meaning to money, and hindsight, a lot of emotion as well. And I realized that was really crippling and bottlenecking me in a lot of decisions. And so instead, I really tried to put myself in situations where I had to view money as exactly what it is, which is purely a tool and a resource, and a fluid resource as well, meaning money can come from any direction you want, and it can be converted into resources, and resources can be converted into money. And the more objectively I started to look at money, the more it started to really increase my abundance mindset and therefore manifest insane things, which at the time seemed like almost effortless because there wasn't like that emotion. And that was really hard to do in 2020 when I think money was a really big mental weight for a lot of people. And so taking that adequate space to really remodel my views on money really was kind of the glue that helped a lot of things come together and helped me to be able to make decisions based off of alignment instead of necessity.
Thanks, Shalane. That's been so impressive to see you aligning your life behind your highest values so clearly and intentionally this year, and then learning about how you've combined that with reframing your view of money. It's very powerful. So thanks for sharing that, Shalane.
You're welcome.
Sam, how about you? What was the big learning for you this year?
I think one of the largest things I learned was pretty similar to that in terms of a reframing of how I viewed money, or rather how I viewed the value of the tasks that I was performing in business day to day. And I was very fortunate to have Shalane come on board with our digital marketing venture, What Advertising, around the middle of 2020, after Shalane and the whole family's previous venture unfortunately did not survive. So we had a lot of
COVID casualty,
business down.
Yeah.
So we managed to rearrange a lot of things that included how we were doing business and the approach to business. And one of the things that I learned, which has really helped me to decide on the most important things that I need to be carrying out and focusing on in business every day. And that's a hard thing to do because you've always got a million things on your plate when you're running a business. You're responsible for everything. I was splitting up my tasks as I planned out my week on rough monetary figures. So I split that up into $10,000 an hour work, $1,000 an hour, $100 an hour, and $10 an hour work. And I started to wipe out the $10 an hour work off my plate and really focus on the $1,000 an hour work and $10,000 an hour work. And as I started to do that and really focus those activities near the start of my working day, we saw the business just flourish like crazy. We started to build really beautiful partnerships with a lot of fantastic people in the digital marketing space. And by focusing on the things that I was good at and naturally talented at, building on those strengths, we really saw a huge push in progress. And so those core things are really that one thing, the most important thing in the day that I would do. Whereas if I was focusing on running around after clients nonstop from the moment I woke up in the morning, I wasn't really able to operate out of that abundant place where I'd cultivated a core work block around what I knew was creating a better business. And it makes me really excited because it's not only work that ends up with the largest monetary figures, but I view my time as more important or more valuable rather than diamonds. And so that's kind of work that actually brings my time back to me to focus on the direction of the business and what the business should be doing rather than getting caught in the minutiae. So that was some very cool maturation and learning and change of focus. That was extremely powerful in the last few months towards the end of 2020, and we are set to grow even more and faster from this point on.
That's great. It's been so awesome to see you focusing your time more and more on those high priority, high impact, highest return activities and to see the results. I remember you started talking about that and you first told me about that concept, earlier in the year. That's really cool. But then to see you actually doing it and the results has been, the proof is in the pudding concept.
Yeah.
You can see the difference.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And so I'm going to keep doing it.
That's great. Thanks, Sam.
Of course.
Sky, what could you share about some of the wisdom you gained in this last year?
Yeah, so I spent the majority of my time in Los Angeles working in the music industry this year. And just a big thing I realized this year is the power of going towards where you're avoiding and going into the unknown, because a lot of times we generally tend to avoid the unknown and journeys that we view as uncomfortable, when in reality those are precisely the places we should be spending our time pursuing. And sometimes it feels like you're running up to this cliff and you're about to jump off. And at the bottom of the cliff is in reality like a bed of feathers, and it's a lot less chaotic than you thought it was going to be. And I found the most peace I've ever had in life and the most chaotic of times and places by just following my definite purpose and going into those spaces. So with that, I'll share a little dialogue I wrote in my spiritual category of what I was learning at that time.
Just to clarify, by spiritual category, you have multiple categories that you set your goals in and that you do your reflections in, right?
Right.
Spiritual is one of the 6 or 7, 5 or 6 that you have, right?
Right.
Okay.
So curiously, in a place where art is the center of attention, I've never felt a spiritual presence like I had this year. It came in the form of so many different cultures, art, conversations, and community. In what felt like the prototype year, I had dreams and 2020 visions of myself introducing to the world what the future of music will sound like, and people were already catching on. Similar to an Elon Musk, where it took 10 years of failure to get a rocket into space before his first successful orbit, and then all of a sudden everyone caught on and started to orbit around him. All of this boils down to my definite purpose on Earth. I felt like this gleaming extension of artwork landing on a planet that needed art more than ever, and like God was looking through me, and the only way he could clearly communicate to them with no static was when I pressed play. When I do press play, it's like the invisible, infectious energy that flows into the other artists that are struggling to find what they sound like, but then all of a sudden it clicks for them, and I happen to be the interface that translates what their spiritual self is trying to express. This makes me the happiest person in the world to see that real time, and through the process of giving others spiritual life, I found my own voice through that, and am now in search of what I'm trying to say along with building others. Another just little thing I learned this year was the 90-10 rule, which basically is with a lot of things you're working on in day-to-day life, it takes you just as much time to finish the last 10% of a project as it does the initial 90%. And I think sometimes when you're building something great, that can do a lot of harm for you when you're holding things back just because they're not absolutely perfect. And in that way, I think sometimes you're late to your own party if you don't push things out, even though they might not look 100%. You just never know what opportunities you're missing by not expressing yourself without everything having to be 100% perfect.
So, Sky, that is so cool that you are, first of all, approaching what you're doing with such a deep, clear spiritual purpose and intent that fulfills your soul and blesses other people so much. And I've seen you throughout your life struggle with this concept of getting things creatively perfect, and for you to have that realization that that last 10% may not be worth it always, right? Mm-hmm. And I struggle with the same thing, so I recognize that. You probably inherited it from me. I apologize for that. So thanks for that good principle for all of us to realize that oftentimes in the creative process, the business process, 90% there is good enough to go to the next step or release the product or do the next thing so that you can continue to progress in your journey. So good stuff. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Guy.
Another thing that I learned this year, God is so good on this stuff. So many times, Satan plans to take us out, which I think he planned to take a lot of us out with the COVID virus here. But then we end up with a better life than we can even ask or think. And I slowed down quite a bit during COVID, and actually we both did. We were traveling quite a bit and teaching quite a bit, and then all at once you're grounded and you're going to live with each other every single minute of every single day. And that brought up some interesting relational opportunities. We'll just call them that.
You learn more about each other.
Yeah. So it didn't take us long to realize that we both had this fancy word called codependency in our families of origin. And then in our marriage, it's a relationship imbalance where one person enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. So when you see it like that, I always viewed codependency had to do with people reacting to having an alcoholic or a really serious addiction in our family. So I never realized that it had a lot to do with just really trying to worry about what other people think and worry about what other people think to the point of not even being able to be yourself. And I discovered I needed to be able to use my voice, and I needed to do it before I got emotionally charged. And then I needed to recognize that Lonnie wasn't trying to change me or fix me or anything like that. He was just trying to be himself. Anyway, both of us, it was just a recipe for needing some good help here. So we got some counseling, which was easy to do through Zoom, which is still available. You can still not have to travel for doing those valuable visits with somebody that can offer you some help in this area. And we recognized a few tools through that process and through books that we read that are helping us and living an amazing relationship in our marriage now that beyond what we could have ever known before with this unhealthy dynamic in our marriage. A couple of books that we've read, Facing Codependence by Pia Malati and Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. And we learned several tools. We've done much journaling, much communication. But what this has done for us is we've been so thankful because us arresting this in our lives, and it's a daily thing, okay? We are practicing these tools every day. We do not do them perfectly, but we are sure better than we used to be. And so we are becoming more intentional and proactive to foster healthy interdependence in each family relationship, starting from the conception of life forward. So that's where we're going from here in response to the learning on this. And interdependence is not at all like codependency. In fact, it's nearly the opposite. A codependent person tends to rely heavily on others for their sense of self and well-being. And there's little ability for that person to distinguish where they end and the other person begins. So there's this enmeshment sense of responsibility to another person to meet their needs, or for that person to meet all of their needs, to feel okay about who they are. It's exhausting. It's so unhealthy. And this type of dynamic doesn't allow an individual room to be themselves, to grow, or to be autonomous. And that ability to be a separate, autonomous individual is the foundation for healthy, independent relationships in our family and in our lives. And interdependence is where we're headed. That's for us to recognize and value the importance of the deep bonds of affinity we share while maintaining a solid sense of self. And that's in a relationship dynamic where we can both grow and benefit from each other. And so we're a benefit to each other and to the world. So huge bunch of learning this last year.
Yeah, it's a big area of learning for us. Thanks for sharing that, honey.
You're welcome.
And I think it will definitely benefit our relationship. And I'm more head over heels in love with you than ever. And I think we're both able to be even more of our true, authentic selves around each other, which of course deepens our intimacy and our bond. And I think it's going to benefit our future generations too, as the ripple effect of that, as we're figuring this out in ourselves. It's amazing we still have so much to learn at this age, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah. We're doing great though. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And you're right. The love feelings have deepened so much. And we had it good prior to this year. So I just wonder, I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if we would have taken this time without COVID being in our lives.
Yeah, I don't think we would have. So it was good. Thanks, hon.
So you're welcome.
Yeah. Lachelle, why don't you share some of your reflections from this last year?
Sure. I feel like I maybe do it a little bit different every year, but this year I just started reflecting, kind of just brainstorming just all the first things that came to my mind that I experienced or was grateful for, or that really stood out to me as kind of crowning moments of the year. And then once I got to all of that, I take many pictures and videos on my phone. And so I like to go back through my phone for the year. And yes, I still have from January on my phone. I keep a lot. Anyway, and I go through, and that helps me re-trigger then even special, and helps me remember totally mundane days, but there's one picture I remember, oh, that was such a good moment, or reminds me of the feeling I got when I saw a sunset or a certain bird, or anyway. So that I like that as part of my reflection. So then when I finished that, I kind of capped it all off, and I thought, if I could summarize this year in one word, it would be centered. And then I wrote this paragraph as kind of my conclusion of my reflection. So I wrote, when the world is chaos, when the boat is being rocked and the waves and the wind are large and wild, I have found my footing. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of me. I love what we have created in our little family, how we see the world, the joy that keeps us going. We look for beauty. We are able to be flexible. We grieve and grow, but we don't stay low. We rest and we go. We create the experiences and work towards the attitudes we want to keep that serve our lives. We're certain of our foundation, the solid rock. He is unshakable and has proven such more than ever this year. We know we will prevail because he prevails. We've established kingdom culture in our home more deeply than ever before. We're confident in his goodness.
Wow.
Beautiful.
And just one short example of a learning. We potty trained our oldest daughter, Libby, this year, and
yay.
that was exciting. By the way, for all parents out there, the book Oh Crap, Potty Training is fabulous. If you want a more succinct, short approach and you don't want to potty train for several months to years on end, this one helped us knock it out, I would say, within a month. But then, in addition to that, there's learning how to travel road trips with a potty training toddler. And that produced some new things. We had also transitioned her to a new car seat that made her car sick. So we had a throwing up potty training toddler. So our first trip together, I thought, oh my gosh, like I never want to go anywhere in the car. Like, great, we can't travel in planes because of COVID and all of our trips getting canceled this year. Now we can't go in a car. So I kind of felt like home locked because it just felt like so much work to even take a town trip to get groceries. So we fortunately had, I think, about 4 back-to-back trips, just traveling. Most of them were about 4 hours average. And the first few just felt kind of like drudgery and hopeless and so much mess and so much work. And then we just started to have fun with it. Our perspective shifted and we realized like the payoff of going to see, so my grandparents, Libby and Blythe's great-grandparents, was way worth whatever inconvenience we felt trying to get there or get home. And then we just started experiencing surprising benefits to that. So like one, we pulled over in a random business parking lot it was some weekend day. So the parking lot was empty, but we pulled up and we just happened to park right in front of this gorgeous bush of gigantic blackberries. So we pulled out Libby's potty training toilet and she went to the bathroom, but then we ended up having our lunch there and just spent like 30 minutes in the middle of our road trip just picking blackberries. And then we emptied out our coffee thermoses and water bottles so that we could take some with us and have it in our breakfast the next morning too. So just something like that. It's surprising, totally random, but something that was a really special memory. So learned a lot about taking inconvenient moments this year and actually finding really good, fun, beautiful moments out of them.
And I will say, Lachelle, for our whole family, seeing how you and Oren handled the very inconvenient series of moments around Blythe's birth was very inspiring to us. You might just talk a bit about that and just in a nutshell, what you learned from that. First, what happened to Blythe, and then what you learned from that.
Yeah, so short story is that Blythe surprised us, came 3 weeks before her due date, and we had a quick, uneventful home birth. So quick that the midwife didn't make it, and so Oren caught Blythe and mom was there. And then the midwife showed up about 5 to 10 minutes afterwards. So that part was just jolly and loved it. And she was a little bit early. And so near as we can tell, her lungs just weren't fully developed. So we ended up in an ambulance. And the short version is we ended up in the NICU at Seattle Children's and kind of thought, oh, we'll just be here a day. And it just kept getting prolonged. But we learned so much because now I have a perspective of, I feel like often hear parents who we're in the NICU or we had a baby in the NICU and it's just kind of like a flippant thing, almost like people talk about, oh yay, we're pregnant, but then you don't hear the myriads of stories of losses or people who can't get pregnant or, it's a light thing, but it's a huge struggle and heartache for so many people. So I have a totally new appreciation and understanding of the staff at hospitals in general, but especially in intensive care units and what they go through and the level of compassion that we experience from the staff and just being grateful to be on the receiving end of compassion is very humbling. And then Oren and I just, from being in such a vulnerable experience together, grew so much. And one really valuable moment, we thankfully, Blythe just needed some help. She was never her life was never in danger, but we were surrounded by families who were walking in and out of the NICU, seeing other parents walk in and out, and we don't know, do they know if their baby's going to make it? We didn't know. And so there was one point where we had to walk through all the rooms to get to ours. We're at the very back, and Oren walks in after doing something and just walks in, and he just felt the weight of it and just like a whole body sobbing, just feeling such compassion and just wanting to do whatever we could, to be there, to pray, or to just acknowledge the trial that so many of the parents and the children, these tiny babies fighting for their lives. And side note, that all happened during the protests and the lockdowns and the early curfews in Seattle. So when we went there, all of the grocery stores were boarded up and everything. And it was this, not to take this super political, but just brought it to what is life about when there's all of this anger and hate happening and fear, businesses boarded up. And then we're in the NICU with a myriad of other families who are just hoping that their babies live. Right. And so just a huge cut away all of the fluff, and what is left in life and what really matters was really clear in our marriage, in our family, and then kind of as a whole in what we want to just how we want to see people and be there and know how valuable it is to experience pain, because then and you can just relate with people who have had such intense whole body heartache, and that's an experience that never goes away. It becomes part of you, and I think that's what makes life so good. It makes ordinary life so rich when it's disturbed like that, and all you're thinking about is getting back home so you can read a children's book in bed at 6:30 a.m. with your toddler.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lachelle, thank you for sharing those profound thoughts. And I think for our entire audience, that makes a difference in how we frame what we've all experienced in the last year. I know some of you listening to this may be thinking, wow, they seem to have a lot of stuff going on, and they don't seem like they had many challenges this year like we did. But that's just one tip of the iceberg of some of the challenges that we had this year. And things that we learn from that are lessons that truly enrich our lives, that you can only learn when life gets disrupted, when life as we know it gets disrupted. So I'd like to encourage all of you to do what Tay described and practice effective blaming. To blame the challenges that you may have had this year as a result of COVID or something else. There's life that kept happening with or without COVID, and there's been challenges that people have had even completely independent from COVID. But practice that effective blaming where you can blame that challenge on some good result that you choose to create in your life or in the world around you and the lives of the people that are important to you. Because the reality is that is a choice we all have the capacity to make, and no one can take that choice away from us. No one can take away from us that one thing, and that is the story that we tell ourselves about whatever circumstances that we're in, and what we choose to make of that in our own mind. And the state of mind that we choose to take on as a result of that is only our choice. So you've heard some tools here that we've chosen, ways to capture the long-term vision, the ideals that you have for life, and break them down into smaller steps. And some of you may be thinking, well, man, I'm just trying to survive right now. I'm just trying to get past this thing, whatever this thing is. And I just want to encourage you, hopefully the concepts you've heard here, to embrace challenges, to learn things in your personal life, like Shelley shared about things we're learning, how this challenge brought us the opportunity to break up some things in our own inner lives that we never really addressed well before. Or Sky shared about the power of just being clear on your own deeper purpose, the meaning behind what you do, and let that drive you, the spiritual purpose or meaning behind what you do, let that drive you. Or capture some vision that is important to you, that's exciting to you, get clear on the reason why that's important to you, and figure out the one thing you can do today that will move you a little closer to that. And let that be your driving motive, your impetus that lifts you above the circumstances that you may be in that you don't like, or whether it's the disruption in society or politics or anger or all the crazy stuff that's been happening in the world. The reality is that we all choose how we can respond to that. And our family, as you can tell, is certainly not perfect. We're not perfect at responding to any of that. But hopefully just hearing our real life journey of some of the things that we've learned in this last year, things that we're struggling with, visions that we have, will inspire you to take another step in ultimately creating the life that is important to you and your family, your business, the life that you dream about. You can find something that you can do to move closer to that. In so doing, the progress in itself is what brings fulfillment. And one of the things that I shared earlier with the family is we did need to shut down. It's kind of almost more of a nonprofit vision that we've been pursuing for a few years that would be transformative to our community, because it was very much based on events. We are not allowed to do events in our city. still. And that was hard because a lot of our identity was tied up in that. And one of the things that I learned from that was that the significant part of the enduring value of pursuing any worthwhile vision is the joy of the journey of doing something important with people that you love. It's more about the joy of the journey. And you alluded to that too, Shalane. Mm-hmm. And there was another investment that we lost a fair amount of money in that was also shut down because of COVID. And I shared with the family some of the things that I've learned from that tuition, hoping that I can spread the learning around because I paid a lot for that tuition. I learned that money is not the most important thing in life, that I can have great respect and relationship even from people that I fail. Even when I lose money or even lose others' money. And what I learned from that is not to fear losing stuff, not to fear losing anything. Because instead, if I focus most on keeping relationship more than keeping money, then it brings great fulfillment and joy in life, and ultimately the kind of success that really lasts. So I learned that things that I stress out about often don't matter as much as I think they do. And I learned that I'm wrong about a lot of things. I was very wrong about a lot of things when COVID started, and as far as how I thought it would play out and how long it would last. It was a very good, healthy, humbling experience and still continues to be. So we all go through these times of learning from challenges. And the question is less about what we did or didn't accomplish because of that challenge or through that challenge, but more about what did we become as individuals? What did our relationships become? Because those are the things that are above and beyond any challenge or opportunity. So my encouragement to you is take advantage of this extraordinary time in history to make the most of it, and let this be a platform for the next level of greatness and fulfillment in your life, in your family, and in your business.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Systems for Success, where the mystery of success is solved in the magic of the system. To ask us questions you'd like us to address in future episodes, go to systemsforsuccess.com. See you next time.